The shocking truth about cancer that pharma doesn't want you to know. What if everything you've learned about cancer was wrong? What if there was a completely different approach that could revolutionize the treatment of this devastating disease? What if 80% of cancer cases could be prevented with simple lifestyle changes? These questions may seem provocative, but science is revealing a new understanding about the true nature of cancer. What you discover in the next few lines could not only change your perspective, but potentially save your life or the life of someone you love. While billions are invested in conventional treatments, a quiet revolution is taking place in research labs around the world. And no, this isn't about a new miracle drug that will cost you a fortune. It's about understanding the true cause of cancer and addressing the problem at its root. Let's get started. Quiet revolution. Cancer is not what you think. Cancer has for decades been considered a genetic disease, a view promoted by virtually every cancer organization in the world, including the US National Cancer Institute. But what if this fundamental understanding is completely wrong? Groundbreaking research is demonstrating that cancer is actually a metabolic disease related to dysfunction in mitochondria, our cellular power plants. This paradigm shift isn't just an academic curiosity. It's the key to completely transforming how we treat and prevent cancer. The theory of genetic mutation as a cause of cancer has dominated medical thinking for decades, guiding billions in research and treatment. However, this theory does not explain why many cancers develop without identifiable mutations, or why some carcinogens, such as asbestos, cause cancer without causing genetic mutations. Most alarmingly, this misunderstanding may be responsible for maintaining cancer deaths by treating people inappropriately. When we understand that cancer is a mitochondrial metabolic disease, we can reduce the mortality rate by more than 50% in just 5 years. Small power plants. How mitochondria decide between life and death. To truly understand cancer, we first need to understand mitochondria, small structures within our cells that are absolutely crucial to our survival. Mitochondria are like small power plants that produce the energy needed for our cells to perform their normal functions. Interestingly, mitochondria have their own DNA, different from the DNA in the cell nucleus, functioning as an independent organism living inside our cells. These fascinating structures are responsible for producing ATP, the energy currency of our cells, through a process that uses the oxygen we breathe. When mitochondria are healthy, they not only provide energy, but they also control cell growth and keep cells in their normal functional state. The role of mitochondria goes far beyond energy production. They are guardians of cellular health, preventing the uncontrolled growth characteristic of cancer. Every cell in our body, with the exception of red blood cells, contains mitochondria that function as an interconnected network, similar to strands of spaghetti within cells. This delicate system keeps all of our organs functioning harmoniously, from the brain to the liver, allowing them to perform their specific functions. When these power plants function properly, our cells remain in a quiescent state, performing only their designated functions, maintaining order in our body. The secret beginnings of cancer. It's not the genes, it's the fuel. The process of cancer development begins in an insidious way, with a chronic disruption of mitochondrial function in specific cells. When mitochondria are damaged and can no longer efficiently produce energy using oxygen, cells gradually adapt to an alternative form of energy called fermentation. This altered metabolism represents a return to a primitive form of energy production that existed before oxygen became abundant in the Earth's atmosphere 2.5 billion years ago. This adaptation doesn't happen overnight. It can take months, years, or even decades for cells to fully adjust to this new way of functioning. As cells increasingly rely on fermentation for energy, damaged mitochondria gradually lose control over cell growth, allowing cells to begin dividing uncontrollably. The end result is a tumor, a mass of cells that grow and divide unchecked, ignoring the normal regulatory signals that would keep their growth in check. Several factors can trigger this initial damage to mitochondria. Exposure to carcinogenic chemicals, hypoxia, lack of oxygen, radiation, viral infections, old age, or, rarely, inherited mutations. Regardless of the initial cause, All cancers share the same fundamental characteristic: cells with dysfunctional mitochondria that turn to fermentation for energy. The big mistake: how decades of science were built on a misguided theory. Nuclear transfer experiments offer compelling evidence that cancer is not a genetic disease, but rather a metabolic one. In these experiments, when the nucleus of a cancer cell, thought to contain the cancer-causing mutations, is transferred to a normal cell whose nucleus has been removed, the resulting cell does not form cancer. On the other hand, when the nucleus of a normal cell is placed in a cancer cell without a nucleus, containing damaged mitochondria, the cell develops cancer quickly. This overwhelming evidence clearly demonstrates that the origin of cancer lies not in the genetic mutations in the nucleus, but in dysfunctional mitochondria in the cytoplasm of the cell. In addition, normal tissues often contain the same driver genes that are supposed to cause cancer, without developing the disease. Further proof that genetic mutations are not the primary cause of cancer. The persistence of the genetic theory of cancer, despite this clear evidence, can be attributed to the cognitive difficulty in abandoning established paradigms and the significant financial interests built around this theory. This misunderstanding has directed decades of research and billions in funding to targets that do not address the true cause of cancer, resulting in limited progress in reducing cancer deaths. The refusal to recognize cancer as a metabolic disease may be one of the biggest mistakes in the history of modern medicine, costing countless lives. Sugar, cancer's deadly ally. That's in your breakfast. Glucose, or sugar, plays a crucial role in the development and progression of cancer, but not in the way many think. It is important to clarify, sugar by itself does not cause cancer, nor is it directly carcinogenic. However, cancer cells rely heavily on glucose as fuel for their uncontrolled growth and division, utilizing it through the fermentation process. When we maintain chronically elevated blood glucose levels through diets high in processed carbohydrates, we are essentially providing a steady supply of fuel to potential or existing cancer cells. Additionally, high blood sugar levels over time can lead to systemic inflammation, which in turn can damage mitochondria in cells, creating the perfect environment for cancer to develop. This vicious cycle explains why obesity has replaced smoking as one of the main risk factors for developing cancer. Our modern food environment, dominated by highly processed, high-carbohydrate foods, is creating a perfect storm for mitochondrial dysfunction and, consequently, cancer. Understanding this relationship between sugar, inflammation, and cancer is critical to developing effective prevention and treatment strategies. The hidden nutrient that silently feeds your cancer cells. While glucose is widely recognized as a fuel for cancer, there is another, equally important nutrient that remains relatively unknown: glutamine. Glutamine is an amino acid that serves as a second fermentation pathway for cancer cells, allowing them to survive even when glucose is limited. In the dysfunctional mitochondria of cancer cells, glutamine is fermented to produce energy without oxygen, a process that many cancer researchers are unaware of or poorly understand. This alternative metabolic pathway explains why some cancer cells may continue to absorb oxygen, confounding many researchers, while in reality they are using that oxygen inefficiently, not for normal oxidative phosphorylation. Glutamine's role in cancer is so significant that if you focus only on restricting glucose, cancer cells can survive using glutamine, and vice versa. To effectively fight cancer, both fuel pathways, glucose and glutamine, must be targeted simultaneously, creating a double bout that cancer cells cannot overcome. Unfortunately, reducing glutamine through diet is extremely difficult. The only truly effective method is water-only fasting for prolonged periods. Drugs that target glutamine metabolism, such as DON, 6-deazo-5-oxo-L-norlucine, are showing promise as part of metabolic therapeutic approaches for cancer. Chemotherapy and radiation. Why the current system is failing you. Standard treatment for cancer, surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation therapy has saved many lives, but often at a terrible cost to overall health and quality of life. Many cancer survivors who have received standard treatments suffer from neuropsychiatric issues, hormonal imbalances, digestive issues, and various other health complications as a result of these toxic treatments. Perhaps more disturbing is the fact that many patients develop new cancers as a direct result of these treatments, creating a vicious cycle of disease and intervention. Even new immunotherapies, widely promoted as the future of cancer treatment, are based on somatic mutation theory and may not address the true cause of the disease. An interesting fact about immunotherapies is that they work best in patients who develop a high fever during treatment, not necessarily due to the therapy itself, but because high heat can kill cancer cells that can't adapt to heat stress. This is a classic example of how we may be attributing success to the wrong mechanism, leading to unnecessarily expensive and complicated treatments when simpler approaches could be just as effective. The dirty secret of immunotherapy is that about 15 to 20% of patients who receive these treatments experience hyperprogressive disease, where the therapy actually accelerates cancer growth, leading to faster deaths. In a field dominated by substantial financial interests, the reluctance to recognize cancer as a metabolic disease is impeding progress toward more effective, less toxic treatments. The revolutionary method that is curing terminal cancers. Metabolic therapy represents a fundamentally different approach to treating cancer, focusing on the underlying mitochondrial dysfunction rather than the genetic mutations. This therapy involves simultaneously restricting the two main fuels of cancer, glucose and glutamine, while transitioning the body to using alternative fuels that cancer cells cannot metabolize efficiently. Documented cases show impressive results. Patients with advanced cancers, considered terminal by conventional standards, experiencing complete remission through metabolic therapy. One notable example is a man diagnosed with advanced prostate cancer, hypertension, and type 2 diabetes, which was considered beyond the reach of conventional treatment. Using only water fasting and metabolic therapy, he not only saw his cancer go into full remission, but he also experienced complete resolution of his diabetes and hypertension. Metabolic therapy benefits enormously from the addition of water fasting, which dramatically reduces both circulating glucose and glutamine, effectively starving cancer cells. When cancer patients are in ketosis, a metabolic state where the body uses fat instead of glucose for fuel, the effectiveness of chemotherapy drugs can increase significantly, allowing for smaller dosages and reducing toxic side effects. This approach not only treats cancer, but also improves overall health by addressing other chronic conditions and strengthening the body's natural immune system. Turning fat into power: how the ketogenic diet suffocates cancer. The ketogenic diet has emerged as a powerful tool in the arsenal against cancer, thanks to its ability to fundamentally alter the body's metabolism. A high-fat, low-carbohydrate ketogenic diet forces the body to produce ketone bodies, which serve as alternative fuel for normal cells, but which cancer cells cannot utilize efficiently. This unique metabolic state creates a hostile environment for cancer cells, which rely heavily on glucose and glutamine, while supporting the healthy function of normal cells. Ketone bodies not only provide energy to normal cells, but are also metabolized in mitochondria with extraordinary efficiency, producing fewer harmful reactive oxygen species that can damage cellular DNA. This metabolic shift explains why cancer is almost unknown in Aboriginal populations that follow traditional low-carbohydrate diets, effectively keeping them in nutritional ketosis. For cancer patients, a zero-carb diet for 10 to 14 days can be a crucial first step before transitioning to water fasting, making adaptation much less stressful for the body. Ketogenic feeding is not only therapeutic for patients with existing cancer, but it can also be a powerful preventative strategy by keeping mitochondria healthy and reducing systemic inflammation. This approach represents a return to the more natural diet of our ancestors, who evolved in a food-restricted environment and consumed mostly low-carbohydrate foods. Know your GKI number, the most important measurement you've never heard of. The Glucose Ketone Index, GKI, is a vital diagnostic tool that provides a quantitative measure of the body's metabolic state, especially relevant to cancer prevention and treatment. Initially developed for cancer patients, the GKI measures the relationship between blood glucose levels and ketone bodies. offering a window into the effectiveness of metabolic therapy. It's not enough to just follow a ketogenic diet or do intermittent fasting. The GKI allows you to objectively measure whether your body has actually reached a metabolic state that is hostile to cancer growth. For cancer patients, a GKI value of 2.0 or less, ideally below 1.0, indicates that the body is in therapeutic ketosis, where cancer cells are deprived of their preferred fuels. Most people who follow a standard Western diet have GKI values between 50 and 60. Levels that create an ideal metabolic environment for cancer development and growth. Measuring your GK, I regularly can reveal individual patterns, such as the time of day when you reach your lowest values, allowing for additional therapeutic interventions, such as hyperbaric oxygen therapy for cancer patients, at the optimal time. Interestingly, emotional stress can significantly elevate blood glucose levels, highlighting the importance of stress management as a component of metabolic therapy. Tools such as the Keto Mojo Meter allow for convenient monitoring of the GKI at home, allowing individuals to take control of their own metabolic health in a quantifiable manner. The free remedy: how fasting can destroy cancer cells in days. Water-only fasting emerges as one of the most powerful and accessible cancer interventions, with the ability to dramatically impact tumor metabolism in a matter of days. Unlike expensive medications or invasive procedures, water fasting costs nothing, and may be the most effective intervention to simultaneously reduce glucose and glutamine, the two essential fuels for cancer growth. When the body goes into prolonged fasting, a process called autophagy occurs, whereby cells begin to eat their own damaged components, including dysfunctional mitochondria, essentially performing deep cellular cleansing. This process, recognized with the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2016, demonstrates how the body has intrinsic self-repair mechanisms that are activated during fasting. For individuals transitioning from a standard Western diet to fasting, the first few days can be challenging, with symptoms such as headaches and tremors due to metabolic adaptation. However, starting with a ketogenic diet for 10 to 14 days before fasting can make the transition much smoother, allowing the body to gradually acclimate to the utilization of fat as its primary fuel. During prolonged fasting, the body maintains a very low level of glucose through hepatic gluconeogenesis, just enough for cells that absolutely require glucose, forcing cancer cells to compete with normal cells for scarce resources. Historically, our ancestors often experienced periods of food shortages, keeping them in a state of intermittent ketosis, a condition that may partially explain why cancer was relatively rare in pre-industrial populations. The 5 foods that are practically inviting cancer into your body. The modern food environment is filled with products that promote chronic inflammation and mitochondrial dysfunction, creating ideal conditions for cancer to develop. Highly processed foods, especially those high in refined carbohydrates and added sugars, are among the worst offenders, providing a steady supply of fuel for potential cancer cells. Packaged products with long shelf lives often contain chemical preservatives and synthetic ingredients that our bodies are not evolutionarily equipped to process, putting additional stress on our mitochondria. High fructose corn syrup, found in countless processed products, sometimes disguised simply as glucose on labels, is particularly problematic due to its impact on liver metabolism and insulin levels. Foods fried in low-quality vegetable oils, which become rancid and oxidized when heated, contribute significantly to cellular oxidative stress, potentially damaging mitochondria. Processed meats containing nitrates and nitrites, such as many cold cuts, conventional sausages, and bacon, have been linked to an increased risk of several types of cancer. Refined grains, such as those found in white breads, pasta, and most commercial baked goods, are quickly converted into glucose in the body, raising blood sugar levels and potentially feeding cancer cells. The ubiquitous nature of these problematic foods in our food supply, combined with their low cost and convenience, makes it difficult to avoid them, a situation that contributes significantly to the rising cancer rates in Western societies. The forgotten promise: how 80% of cancers could simply disappear. The claim that 80% of cancers are preventable is not an optimistic exaggeration, but a conclusion based on solid research on the role of metabolism in cellular health and cancer development. Nobel Prize winner Otto Warburg was the first to propose this idea, and modern research is confirming his view by demonstrating that cells with healthy mitochondria are extraordinarily resistant to the development of cancer. If we understand that cancer is fundamentally a metabolic disease and not a genetic one, prevention becomes not only possible, but highly achievable through strategic lifestyle changes. The stark contrast between cancer rates in modern Western societies and Aboriginal populations following traditional low-carbohydrate diets offers compelling evidence of the power of nutrition in cancer prevention. Our modern Western diet and lifestyle have created a perfect storm for cancer. High consumption of processed carbohydrates, minimal physical activity, chronic stress, and exposure to environmental toxins. If government health agencies officially recognized cancer as a mitochondrial metabolic disease and recommended metabolic therapies for prevention and treatment, the cancer death rate could plummet in a short period. The rising rates of cancer we are witnessing, with cancer overtaking heart disease as the leading cause of death in some countries and populations, are not inevitable, but a direct consequence of lifestyle choices that we can modify. The power to prevent cancer is literally on our plates and in our daily choices, not in future technologies or as yet undiscovered drugs. The power is in your hands. Choose to live cancer-free. We've come to the end of this transformative journey about the true nature of cancer, and the most powerful message you can take with you is this: you have far more control over cancer than you ever imagined. Understanding cancer as a metabolic disease opens up a whole new world of possibilities for prevention and treatment that are accessible to virtually everyone. When you make conscious choices about your eating, incorporate strategic fasting, maintain regular physical activity, and manage stress, you're not only improving your current quality of life, but literally reprogramming your cells to resist the development of cancer. It's not about living in constant fear or taking permanent extreme measures. It's about understanding the fundamental principles of metabolic health and applying them in a balanced and sustainable way. Even small changes, such as reducing your consumption of highly processed foods, incorporating periods of intermittent fasting, and adding more movement to your daily life, can have profound impacts on mitochondrial health. Remember, your mitochondria are incredibly resilient and respond quickly to positive changes in the cellular environment, working tirelessly to restore health when we give them the right conditions. Share this knowledge with your loved ones, as education is the first line of defense against cancer in a society bombarded by misinformation and commercial interests that often override public health. The revolution in understanding and treating cancer will not come from the top down, but from empowered individuals who demand better approaches and take control of their own metabolic health. You're not alone on this journey. A growing community of researchers, clinicians, and patients are recognizing the power of metabolic therapy and sharing inspiring stories of healing and transformation. The future of cancer treatment is already here, not hidden in some secret laboratory or dependent on futuristic technologies, but available now, based on fundamental biological principles that are our birthright as human beings. The choice is yours, and the time to act is now. Your life, and potentially the lives of those you love, may depend on it.